friends, it is Claire from Woodshed Theory coming at you with another video. Surprise, surprise. I just wanted to address, I know I've been moving around in videos like this. Last video was me against a tan wall. I thought that was kind of blah, so I moved back to the window. I hope that you don't mind. I'm still new at this YouTube thing and I don't know what I'm doing, so here we are. Hi friends, it is Claire from Woodshed Theory, and today we are talking about obsessive compulsive disorder, which is a comorbidity of autism, which means that they often appear in the same patients. I wanted to talk about this topic today because before I ever knew I was on the spectrum, I was diagnosed around 29, 30 years of age with OCD by my therapist and psychiatrist, and knowing about my mental illness was what eventually led me to the final clue that ASD was part of my life, because I learned that they have a tendency to go hand in hand, especially in undiagnosed ASD. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about my journey and a little bit about OCD and what it really is and how it presents in me. This is a very broad topic and it's hard for me to kind of pick one thing to talk about. So if you feel like I'm not being as specific as you'd like me to be, hang tight. I'm sure I'll have a million videos later that talk about this. It's hard for me to know where to start this story because I have been suffering from obsessive compulsive disorder for most of my life, since I was a young child, and it was really distressing for me. I had reached out to doctors, friends, and faith leaders over the years, maybe looking for some help with what I was going through, and I knew I probably kind of had OCD, but I had no idea the extent of my illness, and I was not aware the extent that it was impacting my life. When I walked into my therapist 2 years ago and told her I thought I kind of had OCD and then proceeded to have a panic attack while I explained to her why I thought that, she immediately recommended me to a psychiatrist and an OCD treatment group. Maybe this is where I should be clear that I don't have the cute kind of OCD, the, oh my god, I'm so clean, or I just need everything on my desk to be straight OCD. I have the terrible, distressing, intrusive thoughts, takes up hours of my internal time, take medication, psych ward therapy group kind of OCD. This is important to talk about because OCD is a very isolating disorder, and I have found that most sufferers suffer in silence for fear of even discussing what's going on mentally with them. It's pretty scary stuff. So what is OCD and what does OCD stand for? I think most people by now know that OCD stands for obsessive compulsive disorder, but I wanted to break that down a little bit further. O is for obsessions. There's no song. O is for obsessive. People with OCD suffer from obsessions. This can really be an obsession about anything. It just needs to cause you an uncomfortable amount of anxiety. OCD is at its core an anxiety disorder. Some common obsessions are contamination, fear of causing harm or violence. The obsessions can be sexual in nature, they can be religious in nature. Really, again, they just need to be causing you an uncomfortable amount of anxiety. Everyone in the world has intrusive thoughts to some extent. The difference with the OCD brain is that the intrusive thoughts have gum on them and they get stuck to the frontal cortex of your brain and they don't want to leave. So a normal person has an intrusive thought, they're able to say, that is actually not something I need to worry about, moving on. And an OCD person gets that thought stuck in their brain and they're stressing out about it and want to fix it immediately. So basically, you have the obsession, you have the intrusive thought, your first response is intense anxiety, and immediately your body's saying, what do I need to get rid of the anxiety? And that's where the next letter comes in, and that is C for compulsive. You may be familiar with some of the compulsions of OCD. Popular ones in media are cleanliness, making sure that everything is perfectly clean. You might know about people who check their locks, who check their stove. Compulsions really can be anything. It's whatever behavior that you have adopted to make the anxiety stop from the intrusive thought. So, I mean, that could look like anything. It could look like tapping your head until you feel comfortable, spinning in circles, counting ceiling tiles. I could go on and on. The biggest thing is that there is the intrusive thought and then the compulsion, the action that you're doing to get rid of the intrusive thought. The issue that you run into is that anxiety is hardwired into the human brain, and it isn't necessarily a bad thing. Anxiety is a tool that our bodies use to tell us when something is wrong. But in the OCD brain, the anxiety always comes back because you will inevitably think about the intrusive thought again, and that is where the cycle restarts. So to sum up the cycle, you have the intrusive thought or the obsession, you do the compulsion to relieve the anxiety in the short term, then you have the intrusive thought again, and then you do the compulsion to relieve the anxiety again. What happens after this is your brain gets conditioned into a cycle. In fact, each time you do a compulsion to get rid of the anxiety, it's going to make the obsessions worse. I like to think of it as your brain being a record, and that record's being scratched over and over through the cycle until there's that permanent groove that has formed into your brain, and then this is the way that you act now. This cycle happens over and over until finally the strange behaviors that you may associate with OCD become second nature to the sufferer. The thoughts actually become worse because you are actually trying to make them stop by doing your compulsions. But really, by doing the compulsions, you're just scratching that record, scratching the obsession deeper into your brain. It's kind of like a really dysfunctional relationship. So how has OCD affected my life? I would say that a lot of the symptoms that come along with OCD, the really high anxiety, the perfectionism, those were all things that took up a lot of my time. I just lived in a state of constant anxiety. I was constantly uncomfortable and constantly trying to do things to get rid of the anxiety. In my life, that has taken on many different iterations, but always comes back to the same issue, which is the obsessive compulsive disorder. So at one time in my childhood, I was a hand washer. I'm definitely a checker. I love to check a door, let me tell you. I definitely have obsessive routines that help me get through my life that I work very hard on not doing. And when I did get help, I was surprised by how much of my day I was spent. When I did get help, I was surprised by how much time I was spending doing OCD behaviors. And I would say hours a day without knowing it. It's pretty crazy. hours a day. The first time I sat with my doctor after diagnosis, they told me that high doses of antidepressants had been found to really help treat people with OCD, and that after a year on the medication, my life would be completely different. They did tell me, however, that the medication was only going to get me 60% of the way there, and that the other 40% would be the hard work that I put into treatment, and that has been completely true. I would say that what the medication has done for me is it has really helped with the intrusive thoughts. They are a lot less disturbing and a lot less frequent, so they've cleared my mind in that aspect. I'm a lot calmer and more aware of what is going on around me, so it has really helped with the anxiety portion of OCD, and it just overall has made my life so much better. If you are thinking about maybe trying psychiatric drugs to help with your OCD, I would totally go for it. I know that not every OCD sufferer is able to take medication. I'm just talking about my experience and what has been helpful for me. It did take me a while to figure out a type of medication that was the best for me, but now that I have, I generally feel about 60% better, and the other 40% has, as my doctor had mentioned, been the hard work that I've put in. Mostly my recovery and OCD management, the help has come from going to group therapy. Try to go once a week, and it has really helped me to meet other people who are suffering from OCD, to understand my illness more scientifically as an illness rather than as something that I'm just going through on my own and, maybe I'm crazy and there's nothing really wrong. It's so nice to be around a group of people where you're talking about OCD scientifically and talking about proven treatment methods of what you can actually do to help with your symptoms and to relieve the anxiety in the long run and to let go of some obsessions. So yeah, now I take medication. I go to a group therapy class to help me, to help support me through my OCD treatment. It has been a long 2 years working on myself. I'm able to talk about it now because I've put the work in. And is everything completely better? No. But when I first started treatment, I was a freaking mess. I just cried all the time. It was overwhelming. I spent my entire life not knowing that this was an illness that I was suffering from, just trying to buck it up and push through and live a normal life. But yeah, I was really, really suffering all the time since I was a child. So that's fun. Just to sum up, OCD has been a huge part of my life. I found out that I was suffering from it 2 years ago. It has been a long, long process for me to just work on getting better, and I feel so much better. I know that, again, this isn't encompassing of everything to do with OCD. I just wanted to share a little bit of my story to maybe encourage people who might believe that they have this mental illness to get some help. But there's so much more to say. This is just tip of the iceberg. That's everything I wanted to cover today. So I guess my question for you would be, do you have any questions about OCD that you'd like me to address? What has been your experience with obsessive compulsive disorder? Is it just something that you've seen on a TLC special or in the media? Did you think it was just somebody who likes to keep their house really clean, or something that is just for people who like things a certain way, or are you aware that it is a full-blown mental illness that people need help with? Anyway, I hope that you have a wonderful week. Please like and subscribe. I put out videos 3 times a week. And I would love for you to come along and follow me on my journey. I like to do crafts and talk about autism and OCD and about my life and bring awareness to those things to help other people. So please comment down below and like and subscribe. How do you end a video? I'm not sure. Have a nice day. I will talk to you soon. Beep, 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 beep. One day I'm gonna live in the country, and it's gonna be so quiet.